Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Interdisciplinary and Trans-Disciplinary Studies, SOITS, Master's Degree Program. Master of Arts in Philosophy, MAPY. First year. MPY-001 Indian Philosophy. Block-1 Introduction to Indian Philosophy. Unit-1 Nature of Philosophy and the Characteristics of Indian Philosophy. 1.0 Objectives. The literal meaning of the word philosophy is love of wisdom, which has been split into philo and sophia. Since the term philosophy is fascinating but elusive, there are several definitions for this term. All the definitions center on the intellectual exercise concerned with the nature of reality from human perspective. Mainly philosophy deals with the perennial problems of life. As life is a complex and complicated phenomenon, the role of philosophy is immense in making an inquiry into the issues emerging in human life. Issues concerning with social, political, moral, religious, racial, cultural, linguistic and economic spheres confront human beings. The impact of philosophical investigation gains significance in explicating the real meaning or goal of life. Through this unit, students would understand the nature of philosophy in relation to its different branches and the characteristic features of Indian philosophical systems. 1.1 Introduction. Philosophy develops a fascination for wisdom which is different from knowledge. Knowledge is acquired through the sense organs and mind, while wisdom is obtained through the influence of the spirit called the self or soul. The former is fallible, conditioned, limited and alterable, whereas the latter is infallible, unconditional, unlimited and unalterable. Though philosophy initially commences with knowledge, it culminates in wisdom. Only the men of wisdom are called wise men, or philosophers, in the genuine sense of the term. The root element for both of these exercises is thinking. An ordinary human being thinks casually, but a philosopher thinks sincerely, seriously and systematically, especially for the annihilation of the afflictions arising in human life. In this process, a philosopher hesitates to accept any fixed explanations, beliefs or principles. Rather, it engages in dedicated, persistent and systematic inquiry into the prevailing assumptions, methods, as well as criteria by which critical distinctions are made. It is a well-known fact that life is full of mysteries, containing lot of miseries. Life is generally and characteristically defined as the span of existence from cradle to grave. A child is born, grows, marries, brings forth offspring and dies. The doubt remains as to what happens to the soul after death. How does a soul enter into the body before birth? Why are we born? Why should we live? Why are there so many hurdles in life? How are we to overcome sufferings? What is the importance of material life? Is spiritual life superior to material life? What are permanence and change? Why are they caused? What is the problem of one and many? How was the world created? What is the stuff out of which it has been created? Will the universe exist forever? Is there any superpower called God? How is God related to the soul and the world? Is the soul one or many? What are appearance and reality? Philosophy endeavors to explain through speculative reasoning the possible answers to these varieties of questions. Since each philosopher develops his own answer in accordance to his intellectual caliber, we have variegated philosophical truths. One thinker refutes the other, and comes forward with his own viewpoints which are subsequently refuted by successive philosophers. This attitude is based on the historical situation of the philosopher. Metaphorically speaking, a philosopher inhales much before he exhales, i.e., he studies the environment in which he lives, the philosophical predicaments pronounced by his predecessors, the scriptures or literature available during his times, and develops dialogue, discussion, argument, etc., with his rival thinkers so that he sharpens his intellect before exhibiting his philosophical doctrines. The method of refuting the alien view and the presentation of one's own view results in the enrichment as well as enhancement of wisdom to the ardent admirers of philosophy. New vistas of knowledge open the floodgates of wisdom, thereby eliminating ignorance. Almost all philosophers both in the Occident and the Orient have unanimously declared that ignorance causes misery and the remedy for all maladies is acquiring wisdom. Philosophical wisdom manifests in several ways, mainly theoretical and applied. The former is explanatory while the latter is the combination of both theory and practice. Rational discussions emanate mainly from four perspectives: metaphysical, epistemological, ethical and religious. 1.2 Metaphysics. The etymological meaning of this term is that which transcends the physical realm. In physics we have direct accessibility to the material world and experience its manifestations in actual life. Metaphysical issues are deeply concerned with the intellectual analysis of the deep intricacies of the reality. In fact, the truth about the reality cannot be demonstrated or substantiated, but cannot be denied also. The facts about reality are conceptualized and described. Hence we have both positive and negative approaches to reality. Further, the multifarious reflections of reality enabled the philosophers to contemplate on an ultimate reality and elucidate its nature and characteristic features variously. Thus the idea of God gains more significance as the ultimate reality. Philosophers who have theistic bent of mind have attempted to prove the existence of God logically, and then only they exemplify the nature and functions of God based on certain religious scriptures. The interpretation of the scriptures has made the contemporary thinkers coin the term and explain it in terms of hermeneutics. The belief in one God is known as monism, two gods, dualism and many gods, pluralism. Some philosophers develop counterarguments to the proofs and show their inadequacy or invalidity. Some other thinkers bluntly reject the existence of God with atheistic temperament and clinching arguments as well. The ontological, cosmological, moral, teleological and design are some of the titles on which the proofs for the existence of God are based. God and other associated activities like rituals, festivals, etc., are extensive studies on religion. Another important metaphysical concept is soul or self, the sustaining force in all human and other living species, responsible for consciousness. Like God, the existence of the soul also has been established through logical arguments. The materialists deny the existence of a permanent, abiding substance in the body. That substance which is responsible for all subjective phenomena is termed as the real, and the realization of this self will pave the way for freedom from all sufferings. The ancient Greek philosophers had pronounced the famous slogan, "Know thyself." The idea of the self has a tinge with God of religion, that it is the citadel for God to dwell in. As usual, the atheists deny the existence of both of them, and according to them death is the end of life. None can see or feel the so-called self. Only the mind and the sense organs, both outer and inner, are responsible for human experience. Further, the terms like causality, time, space, universals, particulars, matter, form, mind, body, idealism, rationalism, free will, determinism, naturalism, solipsism, etc., are some of the metaphysical concepts which have been promulgated with arguments and equally rejected logically. The logical positivists and the linguistic analysts have attempted to eliminate the very notion of metaphysics from the purview of philosophy based on the principle of verification. All verifiable statements are sensible and the non-verifiable statements are nonsensical, and hence metaphysics is impossible. However, there are certain statements pertaining to future, like the can statements are neither verifiable nor non-verifiable. Hence, the notion of verifiability has been bifurcated as strong and weak verifiabilities. In spite of the opposition to metaphysics, the study of metaphysics still retains its importance. 1.3 Logic and Epistemology. Since thinking process and the thought content form the basis of all philosophical investigations, the role of logic and epistemology becomes very significant and immense. Logic has been derived from the root logos, which means thinking. It has been succinctly defined as the normative science of correct thinking. It is a scientific study or systematic analysis of our thinking methodology and its product, viz., thought. The thought process takes place thus. A unit of thought is judgment. When a judgment is expressed in a language, it becomes a sentence. All sentences are to be converted into the logical structure, viz., propositions have subject predicate formula with a copula which should be always in the present tense. Only in this structure the linguistic expressions are considered true or false or doubtful. Aristotle is considered the father of traditional logic. Again, logic is treated as a normative science and not as a positive science. A positive science is one whose subject matter are studied as they are. All natural sciences, a few human sciences such as sociology, geography, anthropology, political science, economics, etc., are studied systematically, whose contents are viewed from an existential point of view. No norms are prescribed for the study. Logic, ethics, and aesthetics are the normative sciences whose subject matter are studied from the ought to be point of view. Logic insists on how one ought to think rather than how one is actually thinking. After a statement is made, we pass judgments whether the statement is true or false, and then we determine how that statement ought to have been uttered or written. There are two kinds of logic, viz., traditional and modern. The former is also known as Aristotelian logic, which consists of two sections, deduction and induction. Deductive logic is seriously concerned with the formal nature or structure of statements or propositions so that their validity or invalidity is ascertained. From a given proposition we proceed to a conclusion through some common expressions, instantly or through a medium. Also we proceed from statement to conclusion or vice versa. In induction, the very validity of the given premise is questioned. It is a method through which the major proposition, which is generally a universal one, is obtained. Based on certain postulates, the induction method proceeds from a few particular cases to universal truth. It has been established based on observation, experiment, hypothesis, analogy, enumeration, etc. Universal statements are discovered which are supplied to deductive reasoning for the application of particular instances so that the conclusion is made beyond doubt. All Scientific inventions and discoveries are based on this method.
The modern logic has obtained a new dimension wherein symbols are used instead of statements, and like mathematics, based on certain formulae, the arguments are proved as valid or invalid. Propositional calculus, predicate calculus and axiomatic principles are dimensions of modern logic. All the defects and deficiencies of traditional logic are rectified through formal doctrines and authentic proofs and verifications. The modern logic is also known as mathematical logic. Symbols are used for conjunctive, disjunctive, implicative and negative propositions, and arguments are verified through conjunctive normal forms and certain rules of inference, etc. Epistemology or theory of knowledge envisages the messages about the methods and techniques involved in knowledge itself. It is a deep study about the origin of knowledge, nature of knowledge, relevance of knowledge and validity of knowledge. The relationship between human mind and the phenomenal world which culminates in knowledge is analyzed in epistemology. Theories of truth such as correspondence theory, coherence theory and pragmatic theory form an important subject matter in this subject. 1.4 Ethics or moral philosophy. Another branch of philosophy is ethics, which has been derived from the root ethos, which literally means conduct. Hence, ethics is a normative science of human conduct in relation to human environment. The term moral has been derived from the root mores, which means behavior. Ethics is seriously concerned with perfect human living with certain codes or principles pertaining to conduct and character. All human beings have critical situations to deal with. The reflection or reaction to such situations will determine the moral attitude of men. Morality commenced with the habits of individuals, and when large number of people develop similar habits, they become customs, thus constituting customary morality or conventional morality. This process involves also instinct. We pass moral judgments on the instinctive behavior of individuals, whether good or bad or right or wrong. Good and bad are concerned with value, while right and wrong are attributed to the established regulations or laws of the society or state. The herd instinct, the prudence, thirst, appetite, sex, etc. are some of the instincts, and how they are satisfied will pave the way for estimating the validity of behavior. In the development of ethical codes, the role of reflective morality is immense. All the human activities are analyzed from the perspectives of motivation, intention, consequence, etc., resulting in several theories of morality. The fundamental question to which moral thinkers come forward to respond is, what is the standard of morality? What is the basis on which the human conduct is examined? What is the criterion by which the actions are judged to be good or bad, right or wrong? How are the norms or standards formed? As a normative science of human conduct, ethics helps us in suggesting several criteria to judge human actions. They are classified as historical or classical and modern. The first one starts from Plato. Plato insists on knowledge, and lack of knowledge will lead to evil. Leading a good life, according to him, is similar to the discovery of mathematical truth through mental power or ability. Aristotle promotes the idea of golden mean, that perfect virtue lies between two extremes, and a life of moderate action will bring forth happiness. We come across several standards of morality such as hedonism, both psychological and ethical, that all human actions are oriented towards happiness. Epicureanism and cynicism come under hedonism. Stoicism is a theory which advocates individuals' perfection by learning to be indifferent to external influences. Utilitarianism of Bentham and Mill proposes that the greatest happiness of the greatest number is the standard of moral judgment. The former advocates gross utilitarianism, while the latter subtle, intuitionism, evolutionism, Marxism, Kant's critique of practical reason providing good will are some of the traditional theories of morality. In the realm of modern ethics, we have precise theories based on philosophical analysis to moral theories in connection with necessary and sufficient conditions. There are three different classifications of modern theories: I, either subjective or objective; 2, as naturalistic, non-naturalistic or emotive; and 3, as motivist, deontological or consequence theories. All these theories are primarily concerned with the analysis of the language of morals. Any theory which is non-subjective is objectivistic. Ethical judgments become subjective when they depend on the psychology of the person who alters them. If a moral judgment is reduced to natural science, especially psychology, with true or false formula, then that is naturalistic. If they are not reducible to natural science, then they are non-naturalistic. If any moral judgment is neither true nor false, but consists of the expressions of feelings or emotions, and then it is emotive. If a moral theory is based on motive to determine its rightness or wrongness, then that is motivist. Deontological theory does not depend upon motive or consequence but upon the obligation or duty. If the rightness or wrongness of an action is determined based on the effect, then that is known as a consequence theory. All the theories, whether classical or modern, are having critical estimation which really enriches our knowledge of ethics. 1.5. Religion. Another important branch of philosophy is religion, which deals with the establishing of an intimate rapport with the Supreme Being or reality or God. It has been generally claimed that philosophy without religion will lead to dogmatism or dry intellectualism. Similarly, religion without philosophy will culminate in superstition or blind observances. Hence, both philosophy and religion are complementary in clarifying the subtle implications of all rituals. The origin of religion is wonder or fear. Ancient people wondered the wonderful structure of the world and postulated that a wonderful superpower must exist to create such a magnificent universe. Some people were terrified over the terrors and horrors of the natural phenomena. As the scientific knowledge of such events was absent in those days, they were afraid of them, and each force had been personified as a deity and oblations were offered, prayer songs arose, treatises on adoring such deities also emerged. A few religious people with metaphysical bent of mind wrote commentaries to such religious texts. This attitude enhanced and enriched the glory of that religious tradition. The idea of God has been introduced as a postulate, and any religion with a God supreme is based on belief, faith, love, hope and harmony. The existence of God has been proved from 3 angels: I, logical; 2, scriptural; and 3, experiential. Logically, there are 5 proofs such as ontological, cosmological, moral, teleological, and design. Scriptures vouchsafe for the existence of God revealed by eminent sages and saints. Experience of God in the bottom of the heart and soul is the best proof for the existence of God. The all-pervasive, all-knowing and all-powerful God is essentially required for human life, mainly for expressing love, or technically known as devotion or bhakti. For God is personified as the very embodiment of love, and this love of God towards mankind is expressed through creation, preservation, destruction and bestowal of grace. It is God's grace that sustains human beings at every moment. There are a few religions which deny the existence of a supreme God, like Jainism and Buddhism, but they convey the idea that man can be elevated to the level of God through virtuous and compassionate living. The dwelling places for God have been constructed such as temple, church, mosque, gurudwara etc., and a few days are designated as auspicious and special rituals, festivals, prayers, worships etc. are offered to the presiding God in the dwelling spot. The firm belief is that God will redeem the afflicted souls and bring them ashore from the onslaught of transmigratory existence. It is the human soul which has been tantalized between the sacred and the profane. The luring, phenomenal world has an admixture of suffering and happiness, but the engrossment in divine ecstasy will engender self-illumination and lead to divine communion, which is characteristically termed as the path of no return. The existence of the soul also has been proved logically and intuitively as well. Self-realization becomes an inevitable prelude to God-realization. It is the soul which knows with the help of the mind and sense organs, but relinquishes the empirical entanglements so that it can move towards God and enjoy His perennial bliss eternally. Philosophy of religion also analyzes deeply the problem of evil. Some religions declare that man has invited evils due to baser temperaments and baseless temptations. Some other religions emphatically hold that it is God who has caused evil, so that only after the experience of the torture of evil forces, mankind will engage in overcoming them, for which the Holy Scriptures and discourses of enlightened personalities serve as the guiding spirit. But still the question remains, if God is benevolent and merciful, evil should not exist, but evil persists. Therefore God is not omniscient and evil is a thorn in the gracious nature of God. Religious scholars endeavor to appropriately settle the issue of evil. Most of the religions are mainly concerned with the notions of bondage and liberation. Once again, the idea of soul and the conception of God are involved in this process. The soul before embodiment was pure and free, but after entering into the body it becomes bound due to self-centeredness, selfish activities and attachment towards the peripheral, worldly objects. Through serious involvement in religious engagements and systematic adoration, with sincere devotion, the devotees believe staunchly that they can overcome bondage and attain liberation. Becoming recipients of God's grace is the only remedy to all human maladies. The everlasting solace from the worries of the world is the objective of religious life. Another interesting factor in the religious philosophy is religious language, especially found in the revelatory texts. When the saints are soaked in divinity, they undergo some peak, but unique, experiences which cannot be expressed at that time. Afterwards, they recollect the past events and reveal them for posterity and for the betterment of the world. While doing so, they refer to God's nature, soul's movements, and the pernicious aspects of the world which fall under the legitimate province of the philosophers. The revealed texts contain perfect semantics, syntax, and pragmatics. This phenomenon has been attributed to divine mystery. Besides metaphysics, logic, ethics, and religion, philosophy has a few applied avenues like philosophy of beauty, dealing with the delightful joyous enjoyment or aversion due to ugly nature of objects of beauty. Technically, this subject is known as aesthetics. Linguistic philosophy deals with the role of language in philosophical explanations. Words, sentences, meaning, and their interpretations are well analyzed in developing sensible expressions. Political philosophy gives a fairly good account of origin of states, forms of government, social contract theories, the role of rulers and citizens in political settings, etc. Social philosophy develops the views about human relationship in social aspects, such as group formation, social conflicts, social change, etc. 1.6 Characteristics of Indian philosophy. By Indian philosophy we mean the philosophical systems emerged from the Indian soil. Some scholars call it Hindu philosophy. It is not so, since a few non-Hindu systems are included such as Karvaka, Jainism and Buddhism, which are really critical of Hindu doctrines. Indian philosophy has been designated as Darshana, which is generally translated as philosophy. But it really means intuitive vision. Philosophy is accepted as the nearest equivalent term to darshan. A few saints of the highest order develop certain unique or mystic experiences and reveal them for the benefit of posterity. The spiritual heritage commences with such revelations, and they are testified by reason by a few sages who have developed metaphysical bent of mind. The intuitive vision consists of the wisdom about reality and the secrets of human life, both inner and outer. The interpretations of such wisdom form the basis of philosophical inquiry pertaining to metaphysical doctrines, logical truths, ethical codes and religious practices. The book Sarv Darshana Sangraha, written by Sri Madhvakarya, contains the quintessence of a few systems of thought evolved in ancient India. A large number of scholars, taking into account the contents of this work as the basis, have written volumes of work of Indian philosophy from the historical, conceptual, textual, evaluative and descriptive perspectives. It has been proclaimed that Indian philosophy is scripture-based. The revelations of the saints have been codified and they are classified as having broadly the ritualistic sections and the section on wisdom or Janana. The general name given to the holy text is Veda, which has been derived from the root Ved, which means to know. The Vedic scripture is the ancient treasure trove which exemplifies the cultural heritage as well as religio-philosophical aspects of the Vedic systems. It contained both ritualistic and philosophical materials. Philosophical system like Purva Mimamsa directly developed its doctrines from the ritualistic portion, and other schools of Vedanta built up their philosophical system from the Upanishads, the philosophical portion of the Vedas. Generally, Indian systems are classified as orthodox and heterodox systems, Astika and Nastika systems, on the basis of acceptance or rejection of the Vedic authority. The philosophical schools that accept the Vedic authority are the following: Nyaya, Vaisesika, Sankhya, Yoga, Mimamsa and Vedanta. Karvaka, Jainism and Buddhism do not accept the Vedic authority. 1.7 Special features of Indian philosophy. 1. Almost all the schools of Indian thought emphatically declare that moksha or liberation is or should be the ultimate goal of life. Only the Puranas describe the life after death, pointing out the existence of hell and heaven with popular anecdotes. Intellectually, it implies that one must free oneself from the cycle of births and deaths by putting an end once for all to the strife-torn life. To achieve this ambitious goal, the Indian philosophers suggest certain means starting from lower values to reach higher and the highest values. Wealth and sensuous enjoyment are considered as having lower values, while dharma or righteousness is regarded as the higher value. Obviously, moksha is the highest value. These four values are obligatory in the life of everyone on this earth, and hence they are called as purusarthas, the human values. 2. Indian philosophy expects the seekers after truth and release to lead a life of renunciation. The life of attachment will engender suffering, while the life of detachment will result in eternal solace. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna categorically asserts that a life of renunciation alone will enable the aspirants to reach the domain of God. So all the schools of thought have treated suffering as one of the motivating factors for philosophical thinking. Only when the mind is purified through non-attachment, it will have pure and perfect wisdom and rest on self-illumination, the real prelude to moksha. In fact, suffering or painful experience in life give the motivating force to promote new vistas of thinking and acting. Buddha built up philosophical doctrines on the edifice of suffering, and all his noble truths centered around this concept only. The only difference that is noticed among the schools of philosophy is that according to the theistic thinkers, only by the grace of God one can overcome suffering, while others insist upon individual efforts through moral, physical, psychological and spiritual means. 3. The commencement of Indian philosophy based on suffering prompted a few critics to label Indian thought as pessimistic. Even though Indian philosophy looks at the darker side of life in elucidating the issues emerging in life, the mission with which one has to overcome suffering overcomes the criticism too. Indian thinking, though starts with pessimism, passes through optimism and culminates in eternal pragmatism. The Indian thinkers have realized the truth that a vision without a mission is blind, a mission without a vision is drudgery, and a healthy combination of both vision and mission will make human life prosperous. The pleasure which we enjoy is mixed with pain is engendered in painful situation. The seers assert that it is possible to eliminate pain altogether and enjoy a life of bliss, ananda. Hence they are seriously concerned with sat, existence, which is the truth also, CIT, consciousness, and ananda, everlasting happiness. 4. In the hierarchy of values, Indian thinkers have classified as lower values, higher value, and the highest value. The axiological approach in human life becomes immense in this analysis. Karvaka system considers kama, sensuous pleasure, as the only human value, purusartha, while artha or wealth serves as the means to achieve such ambitious aims. But the orthodox schools treat both kama and artha as the lowest and lower values respectively. They cannot annihilate the human afflictions thoroughly. They are to be checked and continued as to regularize normal human existence. On the other hand, they consider dharma, righteousness, as the higher value, and moksha as the highest value. Only men of virtuous living can aspire for a blissful life where there is no iota of pain. While explaining the state of liberation, Muktism thinkers advocate Jivan Mukti, liberation while alive, and Videha Mukti, liberation after the disintegration of body and soul. As salvation becomes the salient feature of Indian philosophy, it is more optimistic and treats life as having a brighter side. 5. Another important characteristic feature of Indian philosophy is the law of karma, which is based on the scientific law that all actions have equal and opposite reactions, and the famous adage, as you sow, so you reap. All the actions will yield the results, and the efficacy of the fruits is known as karma, which has been derived from the root kar, which means action. The karmas which cause us to take birth and store up while we are born is known as sansita karma. The karmas which have started yielding the fruits are known as prarbadha karma, and the karmas which we accumulate through our volitional behavior are known as agamic karmas. Even those systems which do not accept God believe in the doctrine of karma, which is the sole reason for the cycle of births and deaths. Due to the grace of God, along with human dharmic endeavors, the enforcement of karmic forces may be annulled. The sansita karma would be totally burnt due to the grace of God through the Guru or preceptor. But prarabdha karma, which has started fructifying like the arrow sent out of the bow, will affect the body and annihilate it, for it cannot harm the soul since it is spiritually strengthened and illumined. All the systems of Indian philosophy, in one way or the other, insist upon the moral training as a prelude to metaphysical understanding and religious experience. Only the Karvaka system is rigorous and gives much importance to sensuous pleasure by ignoring righteousness, dharma, and all the cherished norms. The other schools do not explicitly elucidate the significant role of moral codes in human life. They emphasize the necessity of ethical principles to be adapted to actual life, leading to virtues and resulting in happiness. Yoga system in the means for attaining samadhi places yam, the 5 principles to be refrained from, and niyama, the 5 practices to be adhered to, in the beginning itself. It is generally proclaimed that it will seldom lead to immortality. 6. Religion, an important branch of philosophy, also plays a vital role in Indian thought. Vedic religion is the starting point of philosophy in India. Vedantic thought, especially Visishtadvaita and Dvaita, are directly based on Vaishnav religious tradition. Saiva Siddhanta has Saivism and worship of Shiva as the religious basis. Advait at the empirical level does not deny the concept of Isvara and resorting to religious practices. In fact, Sankara has composed several devotional songs on Lord Shiva, Sati, Vishnu and Muruga. Though we have several religious sects with these religions constituting Hinduism, each religious sect has developed its own speculative metaphysics as well as means for redemption. 7. On par with Western philosophy, Indian philosophy also has dealt deeply with political ideologies, social doctrines, linguistic analysis, aesthetic explanations, cultural heritage, and encompasses all the basic features of life. It builds up a fundamental structure with scriptural edifice and rational construction with spiritual superstructure. 1.8 Summary. Mainly philosophy deals with the perennial problems of life. As life is a complex and complicated phenomenon, the role of philosophy is immense in making an inquiry into the issues emerging in human life. Issues concerning with social, political, moral, religious, racial, cultural, linguistic and economic spheres confront human beings. The impact of philosophical investigation gains significance in explicating the real meaning or goal of life. The unit has deliberated on the nature of philosophy in relation to its different branches and the characteristic features of Indian philosophical systems. Philosophy develops a fascination for wisdom which is different from knowledge. Philosophical wisdom manifests in several ways, mainly theoretical and applied. The former is explanatory while the latter is the combination of both theory and practice. Rational discussions emanate mainly from 4 perspectives: metaphysical, epistemological, ethical and religious. By Indian philosophy we mean the philosophical systems which emerged in the Indian soil. Some scholars call it Hindu philosophy. It is not so, since a few non-Hindu systems are included, such as Karvaka, Jainism and Buddhism, which are really critical about Hindu doctrines. Indian philosophy has been designated as darshana, which is generally translated as philosophy, but it really means intuitive vision. Philosophy is accepted as the nearest equivalent term to darshana. Indian philosophy spells out supreme goals of human life as purusarthas. Indian philosophy expects the seekers after truth to lead a life of renunciation. The seers assert that it is possible to eliminate pain altogether and enjoy a life of bliss, Ananda. Hence they are seriously concerned with Sat, existence, which is the truth also, Cit, consciousness, and Ananda, everlasting happiness. While explaining the state of liberation, Muktism thinkers advocate Jivan Mukti, liberation while alive, and Videha Mukti, liberation after the disintegration of body and soul. As salvation becomes the salient feature of Indian philosophy, it is more optimistic and treats life as having a brighter side. The law of karma is based on the scientific law that all actions have equal and opposite reactions and on the famous adage, as you sow, so you reap. Religion, an important branch of philosophy, also plays a vital role in Indian thought. On par with Western philosophy, Indian philosophy also has dealt deeply with political ideologies, social doctrines, linguistic analysis, aesthetic explanations, cultural heritage, and encompasses all the basic features of life. Thank you. Subscribe to our channel for more updates, and we will see you with the next chapter.